Make Japanese the center of your life. The only time you have is the time you make. Written by Khatzumoto, posted sometime prior to November of 2008. Remember before how I learned Japanese and held 3 jobs and was going full-time in college in a completely unrelated major. Remember how I told you that? Well, I'm sorry if I said it in a way to make you feel that you could only learn Japanese on the side while going about business as usual. You can't. It's not like I had XYZ going in my life and Japanese on the side. It's more like Japanese was my life, but I also did the minimum necessary to handle XYZ. But it's also not the case that I had infinite time and resources. I was taking university classes in an unrelated major. I did hold jobs. My budget was often lower than my IQ, smiley face. Which doesn't say a lot, but there you go. So the point here is that despite whatever constraints there may be in your life, despite the fact that you have a life and other commitments, you have to make Japanese the center of your life. This doesn't mean that you don't fulfill your other commitments, that is, if they absolutely must be fulfilled, but it does mean that everything else must subordinate to your study of Japanese. You don't have time, you make it. Don't wait until you have the time, because it's not coming. The time fairy and her bucket of magical schedule opening dust. It was all an elaborate conspiracy by your parents to placate you. Now, even without the benefit of the time fairy, it isn't as hard as it sounds. Just make it a point to ask and answer questions like, how can I make this bend to Japanese? How can I do this in Japanese? For example, one of my jobs involved sitting around and waiting for people to come and ask me questions. This was not an accident. So I put on my headphones and listened to Japanese music while reading a Japanese book. Another job involved looking up programming documentation online, so I looked up the Japanese documents and tried to make some code comments in Japanese too. All of these little things. Walking was another great time to learn. My classes were about the only time I listened to non-Japanese dialogue for any extended period of time. Even then, I took my notes in Japanese, even if it just meant using kanji with heisig meanings. There's a famous quote attributed to Woody Allen, where he says something like 70% of winning is showing up. That's true in learning Japanese too. This isn't the kind of showing up you do in a class, where you sit around bored into catatonia and listen to other students whining about how kanji is hard. No, the real way you show up to doing Japanese is by doing it all day, every day. All Japanese all the time. Headphones on, book or computer in hand, practicing, reading, writing, listening. Show up and you win. The more you show up, the faster you win. I would be lying if I told you I was perfect at applying these principles throughout my life, but I did apply them in learning Japanese. It's with the confidence of that experience that I'd like to share all of this with you. Look at your daily life. It has 24 hours, just like everyone else's. There are bound to be times, places, and activities you can Japanify. Find them. Winky face.